Hi everyone. So hopefully that was a very smooth transition from me, and I think our attendees are just creeping in as we were just a minute or so late on wrapping up our session on international learnings. But I think it was worth it as Elliot and Fleming both had some really interesting input. This is it. We're on the last session of the day. And as I said at the end of the previous session, we're using this opportunity now to introduce or reintroduce a little bit of interaction from our audience. So I am just going to load up what I'm sure you'll be happy to hear is the last slide deck you will see today on our conference. Okay, and I'm sure Emily will let me know if that's displaying properly.
Yeah, that looks great.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emily. So we're going to guide you through a session now that we've titled, Where Do We Go From Here? We've really tried to balance today talking through causes and impacts of blue-green algae and algal blooms, but also the solution. Potential solutions to them as well. It won't be a surprise to anyone who has either been with us today or who is familiar with the Rivers Trust and how we work, that we don't think the issue of algal blooms is one that can be solved by any single group. It cannot be addressed in isolation. So before we bring our conference to a close, we're going to run some more polling where we'd like you to reflect on everything that you've seen and heard today from the science and research on blue-green algae, monitoring of it, the farmers or those who are working with farmers, trying to negotiate some really complex regulatory and industrial landscapes, and also the community groups who are feeling the knock-on effects. You know, we've even heard from people who live on the shores of Loch Ness and who can literally not open their windows in summer when algae is in bloom. So let's bear all that in mind as we go into our questions here. So we've got the same Slido joining instructions as this morning, if you've been with us all day. And the first question that we would like to ask of you is, what will you take away from today? Is there anything that you could do to reduce the risk of algal blooms?
Great to see people typing already.
Yeah, and again, we'd like to cast a fairly wide net here. You know, it could be something like, downloading the Bloomin' Algae app if you've not heard of that before, and monitoring any signs of algal blooms, committing to joining the Big River Watch. We would be really happy to see, perhaps.
Yeah, work with farmers, a great one. Definitely. Yep, citizen
Yeah.
science.
Eating less meat is interesting. I think that's kind of, become vegan. Oh, the answers are flying in. I love it. Another potential answer is, maybe you've sort of virtually met someone today that you'd like to keep in contact with in future. I think the interaction in the chat has been really insightful, and it's clear that many of our audience members are really, really well informed on this topic.
Yeah, so much about citizen science.
Absolutely. I still see lots of people typing, so we're going to leave this for another couple of minutes, but it's
Almost don't want to
very
close it, do you?
I know. It's really handy though that we can see the sort of key themes. And I'm not sure if Ellie from UKCEH, who developed the Bloomin' Algae app, is still on the call, but I'm sure she'd be happy to see that their app is featuring so highly as a takeaway.
Absolutely. And if we do close the poll, then keep your messages going into the chat if you want something to share and didn't get an opportunity to.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, Emily, I'm very sorry to cut it off, but we've got a few more questions to get through, so I'm gonna chivvy us along. Next question is water companies. So we did have Tim on in an earlier session, and there may well be representatives from other water companies in the chat as well. So potentially a trickier one, but what is the one thing you would ask water companies to do to reduce the risk of algal blooms? And again, bearing in mind, well, slightly unsurprising answer first up there, but just bearing in mind kind of what we've heard today about the various different impacts and factors in these algal blooms.
Yep.
Again, data and monitoring really key.
Absolutely. Quite a varied one for this answer as well, isn't it?
Yeah, collaboration, again, a very Rivers Trust friendly answer. So thank you to whoever put that one in.
Yeah, we resonate with that.
Same with nature-based solutions as well, definitely.
Oh, promote low P detergents. Interesting.
That one has just caught my eye because I think I'm certainly very familiar with water companies very active on messaging around how to use the sewer and drainage system in the home particularly, and also on water usage in the home, but not so much on kind of products in the home.
Yeah.
So that is a really interesting one. That's why
We're-
it's good to do these polls to hear new
yeah,
things.
absolutely. Work with local rivers trusts. Absolutely. Another collaboration.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okey-doke. I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. I'll give this another few seconds, but time is running out, so be sure to get your answer in if you want to make sure we'll see it. And again, just I think a really important point to bring back about drinking water. So the more that we can reduce the pollution that's going into catchments from the start, obviously the more efficient the drinking water treatment process can be. But thanks so much for all your answers there. Great to see so many coming in. I'm sure there'll be lots of opinions on the next one as well. But so the next focus will be the food and farming sector and what you think could be done there to reduce the risk of algal blooms. Again, we ask you to kind of reflect on all that you've heard today. We know that the food and farming sector, farmers in particular, are facing a lot of challenges, particularly in a quite a period of transition here in parts of the UK. So let's see what we've got here.
Yep. So regen farming, of course, nature-based solutions. Oh, they're flying in now.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see whoever said about participating in catchment-wide plans. Something that we've not talked about as much today, but something the Rivers Trust is really active in is the catchment-based approach. And across England, at least, catchment partnerships would, I'm sure, be very happy to get more and more involved to work with farmers and support, as we say, more nature-friendly farming. Yeah, catchment partnerships again coming up.
Oh, soil testing's an interesting one.
Yeah, maybe maybe it's either Sian or someone who saw Sian's
Yeah.
presentation earlier today, which is really lovely. We'll just give this one another minute. Obviously, it's a very, very prominent, pertinent topic in relation to blue-green algae. Thank you to whoever said to engage more with folks like Rivers Trust.
I'm looking forward to reading these after having a proper look through and seeing what the answers were.
Yeah. And seeing nappies for chickens feels like the perfect note to end on before we move on to the next question. So thank you again for your answers there. We will be taking these away at the end of the conference and yeah, reflecting on them further. So our last but one question is now, again, I'm sure there'll be lots of ideas here. What is the one thing you would ask the government to do to reduce the risk of algal blooms?
Went from 1 to 9 participants typing very quickly then.
Yeah. Regulate.
Regulate.
Amazing. And integrated catchment governance. Yeah, not surprised to see these messages coming through. Investment also key, and support for farmers.
They come in so fast.
Yeah. And we can see that catchment and enforce
Yes,
have come up, and regulate now have come up as sort of trending words within people's answers. So
and farmers as well.
yeah. I wonder if anyone who was just watching Fleming's presentation in international learnings and is thinking about the carrot and stick when it comes to farmers,
Mm.
negotiating how we can balance the need for food production with the need for nature recovery as well.
Funding more science research, always important. Always things we would welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe something that doesn't get quite as much attention
Mm.
always as the kind of, yeah, regulation enforcement side of things. I'm sorry, because I know that lots of people are still typing answers, but we do have one more question to ask you before we hand over to closing remarks. So I'm going to speed things along because I think our final question is a very important one. Our final question to you today is, what would you like to see the Rivers Trust do next? So this is to do with blue-green algae or otherwise. You know, whether it's something that you'd like to see us do to continue this conversation that we've had today, or maybe you'd actually like to suggest a future conference topic, further webinars, campaigns you think we should be running, people you think we should be talking to.
Keep the discussions going, so absolutely plan on doing that.
Quite
Oh,
reassured to see a lot of people starting their answer with keep.
keep,
We're
yeah,
doing
no,
some
nice to
stuff
see.
right. Yeah. And absolutely, we will continue to advocate to the government for the policies we want to see for rivers, for sure. Education as well, such an important area of what we're working on. I'll leave this going for, I think, just another minute.
Yeah, government and citizen science coming up as trending words in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So thankfully that is stuff that we are already doing, but we know
Yes.
there's room for improvement. Always appetite for more.
That should be our slogan.
Yeah, always appetite for more. Yeah, absolutely. Although, not overconsumption, shall we
No.
say. Okay, well, I'm really sorry to have to end that, but as Emily said, please feel free to keep answers coming through in the chat function, but we are going to need to hand over to Mark in a minute for our closing remarks. I am just going to indulge myself for half a minute or so now to say some big thank yous as we come to the end of the day. Firstly, thank you to all of the speakers and chairs who have contributed, given us their time and their expertise today. Obviously, the event would not work without you. I'd also like to say a big thank you to my colleagues at the Rivers Trust who have contributed invaluably in putting this event together, and obviously to Emily here. You've done your first Rivers Trust annual conference, so huge well done to you, and Matthew, who has been diligently sitting backstage and supporting us all day as well. So thank you so much. Final thanks are to you, our audience, for participating, asking engaging questions, sharing your expertise as well. I'm really happy that it really feels like this has been a multi-way conversation today. As the conference comes to a close, you are going to be prompted to fill out a short feedback survey. I promise it shouldn't take you too long, but we really do value your input to keep improving, or hopefully keep improving our conferences, keep those on an upward trend. And outside of that, please do keep in touch with us, sign up to our newsletter, follow us on socials, get involved with our campaigns and advocacy work, because we really are doing so much for our communities and for our rivers, I hope. But you'll be really happy to hear that is all from us. I'm now going to ask our Chief Executive, Mark Lloyd, to come in, and Mark's going to deliver our closing remarks to wrap up the day. Mark is just on his way. There he is. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much, Becca and Emily. That was really interesting seeing all those comments. And my job now is to try and sum up the day with some reflections on a lot of great content. And I realise I stand between you and getting outside in this glorious sunshine that I think nearly all having. So I'll try and be as concise as I can. It was great to open the conference this morning with an address from Minister Andrew Muir. I think that's the first time we've had a minister open our conference. It sets an interesting precedent that I hope we can repeat in the future. And I think getting a minister along really reflects the elevation of river, lake and loch health to near the top of the political agenda, which has been fantastic to see happen over the last 5 years or so. It was really good to hear Minister Muir's emphasis on the need for collaboration and also, his clear determination to take concerted action, but also note his sort of management of expectations to say that it'll be many years or even decades before algal blooms are completely solved, which was a common warning from a number of presenters. I mean, I guess the best time to have started to address this issue was probably around when I was born in the 1970s. But I guess the next best time is now. So let's get on with it. The Minister's strong commitment to action echoed the highly ambitious declaration we recently heard from the English Secretary of State, Steve Reed, who said that nothing but rainwater would enter Windermere. And I'm not really sure how feasible that is, but it is really encouraging to hear a good statement of strong intent to get a grip on this complex issue. We heard about the causes of blooms in Northern Ireland and how the drive for economic growth and intensive food production has led to this environmental impact. I was really struck by Mark Horton's statistic that Northern Ireland produces 5 times more food than it can eat, which is great for exports. But this requires huge inputs of fertilizer and feed, and there's no way of exporting the waste produced. So it's a sort of simple business of a sink of nutrients. And that's clearly an unsustainable economic model. And the essence of something unsustainable is that it cannot be sustained. So this approach may have had short-term benefits for a little while, but these really are outweighed by the long-term cost to society. And I think we need to bear that in mind in the current national debate that's far too often pitted housing development and economic growth against the environment. And we really should, in fact, we must find ways of driving truly sustainable economic activity. We heard not only about the ecological impact of algal blooms, but also, as Becca just said, the issue for people and amenity value. And it was really horrific to hear about the terrible smell of gas and dead dogs and deer around Loch Ness. We also had some terrifying analysis from Katrina Campbell in the deep dive into science about the toxicity of cyanobacteria, which is great concern for people relying on Loch Ness for their drinking water and for recreational activity. What was once such a wonderful natural resource that gave people delight and joy and respite from the modern world now fills them with fear and despair, and that's all pretty hard to take. So I was pleased we didn't wallow in this pea green soup of gloom for too long, and we actually moved on to hear lots of solutions to the issue being proposed and reported on that I think could give us all some hope. I think we heard about the twin track approach of enforcement of the law and support for farmers to transition to more sustainable practice. A stick is no use without a carrot. And, that was very clear from the Danish presentation this afternoon as well. And it was clear to me, if we're going to fund farmers to invest in making a transition to regenerative farming, we're going to have to find new sources of funding to do that, given the pressures on public funding. And I think there's a strong potential role for the private sector, whether that be, water companies or the big food companies who do make a lot of money out of food, whereas farmers don't. Josh from Rookwood overcame the rural broadband issues very calmly, and gave us an insight into his innovative technique for removing phosphate from water using an all-natural piece of technology. Looks like that could be a real game changer if it could be scaled up, and I think it could make Josh very wealthy if that comes off. So I'm really interested to hear more about that. We also heard some really powerful international case studies after the tea break, with some horrific stories from Africa and Brazil from Elliot Taylor. It shows we're not alone in facing these challenges with water quality. It really is a global issue. Welcome to the Rivers Trust movement, Elliot. Great to have you on board in Ireland. Fleming Gertz from Denmark gave us a great presentation that really showed the limitations of these kind of top-down measures that involve things being done to people rather than getting them involved in designing solutions collaboratively. And I think it's really important as we look to the future to get a wide range of groups around the table to really co-design solutions from the bottom up. And I think that's so important. And I thought, the governance model he described could be a blueprint for the UK and Ireland as we start looking at new ways of governing our water. And with that in mind, I just want to end with just a couple of strategic observations that have come out for me from the day that feel very, very timely. I think the value of citizen science for generating evidence, but also public understanding and engagement was a recurrent theme from lots of presenters. Michelle Walker from the Rivers Trust, River Actions, James Wallace, and Ellie McKay's popular Bloom Algae app from UKCEH, all emphasise that. And I think there's a huge need for science to inform the debate. We have by no means had enough of experts, but I think it was emphasised by Joanna Braniff that we must ensure science is clearly communicated to the public, and it was really clear how powerful it was to sort of summarise the science and put it into a digestible form so that people could kind of understand what the hell was going on. And the Rivers Trust has been championing the need for better data about the condition of water for decades, and the need to bring together multiple sources of data into a common framework so that we have a strong weight of evidence approach to analysing the issues in our water environment. And it does feel like we might actually be on the verge of doing that in England and Wales, in partnership with many other NGOs and regulators and water companies, building on the work of the Catchment Systems Thinking Cooperative or CASCO project that we've been running over the past 3 years. And you heard from Sian Mercer about how those insights have helped inform farm advice and even the development of a catchment market on the River Usk, which is one of the 8 demonstration catchments in the CASCO project. Hopefully that learning can spread to other parts of the UK and Ireland over the coming years if we do manage to get it off the ground, which I'm really hopeful we will. And I think once we've got the data, we really then need to use those data sets to inform a new integrated catchment governance system to manage, not just nutrients, but all of the pressures on our rivers much more holistically. Each catchment really, needs a nutrient budget, and then you need to make decisions at a local and regional scale to manage the trade-offs to keep to that budget. Our current system kind of manages each input of nutrients separately, but with varying degrees of intensity, ranging from really quite rigorous analysis of some inputs to completely not at all. There are lots of things that we just don't manage in any way whatsoever, or even measure. And of course, if we can use nature-based solutions to address those inputs, we can also drive benefits for flood and drought resilience. We can make more space for wildlife, and we can reduce carbon emissions, so help contribute to tackling climate change. We really need to break out of silos and integrate these kind of objectives and try and solve all of these huge challenges together rather than individually, but also bring together multiple funding streams. And instead of measuring individual outputs and problems individually, but measure our success by outcomes in terms of river and catchment health. So this is really, the key thrust of the proposals that we've been making to the Cunliffe Commission, which is going on at the moment in England and Wales, and we hope that it could lead to a really radical shift in the way that we manage water in this country, to take a much more systems approach. The exposures of the failures in our current system, so apparent from the appalling issues in Lough Neagh, Windermere, and the Wye and elsewhere, I think really help make the case for this overhaul of regulation and decision making. So I want to end by thanking all of the presenters and panelists again. You've all done a great job. All of you for attending and putting in great questions and comments in the chat. And above all to Emily, Matthew and Becca for once again putting on such a thought-provoking and inspiring event. So please express your thanks very briefly to them in the chat. And of course, any donations to the Rivers Trust are always welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And yeah, thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening and that we'll see you again soon.